How we doing, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. Tonight we are going to be divulging, and assessing the American League West, giving our picks and predictions. Got some NFL news ranging from Lamar Jackson to Aaron Rodgers, with a quick mention of the Packers GM, seeing what's going to happen with that potential maneuver, if it's going to happen anytime soon. Our NCAA Final Four is set. Zappy and I will be speaking on that. And as I already stated, a very detailed analysis of a very competitive, strong division in the American League. With me, one of my two co-hosts, Mr. Mike Zappy. Good to see you, buddy. How's your first day at your new job?
First day was good, man. It was real good. Not going to lie. It went by pretty quick. I was having a good old time. Place is huge. I will say that.
Cool.
It's good.
Happy to hear that. We actually made a mention of it the other day, and Idris was like, man, I hope if I call that Zappy just answers the phone, that would be like a home run. I was like, I don't know.
Coverage denied.
Coverage denied. Just off the jump. Once you hear his name, coverage denied.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of some denials, Lamar Jackson. Today he bid farewell to the Ravens fans ahead of letting the media know he requested a trade earlier this month from the Baltimore Ravens. What's interesting about this, and you brought this to my attention in our group chat, is that you said while he requested a trade, they're technically still negotiating player and current team. This is a very rare case where it's usually one or the other. It's not both, but in this case, it actually is both. As we've said on previous shows, Lamar does not have a real agent. It's a very bizarre situation through and through. And it seems like the temperature of the league is that nobody is really looking to trade for him right now, given some of his salary demands. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I think the story has a couple of loose ends. First of all, him saying that he requested a trade on March 2nd before the franchise tag was applied to him. But then for John Harbaugh to say that Lamar to say that John Harbaugh, when he was advocating that Lamar Jackson is their starting quarterback for the foreseeable future and that he wanted him back, and saying the same things he was saying last year, that apparently Lamar rescinded his trade request. So because they saw, I guess, that, hey, even though we had two Pro Bowl quarterbacks, you're still our guy.
But you get the strangeness of it, that he's putting this out as a goodbye to the fans, and now you're giving us that clarification. It's weird. It's almost like I think he's trying to get on the good graces of the fan base.
Yeah, I think he's trying to get on the good graces of the fan base, and I think he's also coming to the realization that, just like we saw with a lot of free agents this year at certain positions, that you're not going to get the money you want. He should, bottom line, walk in there, sign that 3-year fully guaranteed contract, and go from there. But instead, he wants to try to get the 230 at least guaranteed, just to top Deshaun Watson. And we're not, I don't think it's a longevity thing. I don't think it's a 5-year thing. I think he just wants to top that 230 number. And it doesn't make sense because, like you said, it's all right, cool. I could talk to anybody, but no one wants to give me that. Somebody has to blow him out of the water for him to bring that offer to the Ravens and say, hey, this is what the Colts are going to offer me. Are you willing to match it? Yes or no?
You know what's funny, though? You know what's funny? Hypothetically, if Deshaun Watson was going through his year-long suspension during this time, this may have been the situation where maybe Lamar would have ended up being a Brown, and you would have had one of those rare divisional deal trades, which happens every once in a while. But we've said it on the show before. It's not intelligent what the Cleveland Browns did, investing all that money in a guy who was going through what he was going through. The Baltimore Ravens are not the same kind of organization that's going to show that desperation. And if we look at Lamar going back to 2020, gets injured in a playoff game at Buffalo, and each of his last 2 seasons, he was unable to finish the season out. He didn't play in the playoff game this year. Key play in that game, his backup Huntley tried to jump over the pile, the fumble, Bengals recover, going the other way. That could have been essentially the difference in the game, and we saw how close the Bengals were to going to a second consecutive Super Bowl. They could have died right there at home against the Ravens. It's not so much that I'm on the side of a team or a player. I guess what I'm saying is if I was running that team, I wouldn't be in a big rush to pay a guy that hasn't been able to finish his last 2 seasons and also, his most recent playoff game. I don't think I would be in a big rush.
And that's the problem with trying to be your own agent, because at least an agent is going to sit there. I mean, these are attorneys. These guys know
essentially, yes. Yes.
And they're going to recommend the best solution and say, hey, this is what we think you should take. We won't get anything more. But he's stuck in his ways that I've got to get this. I got 133 guaranteed. Why can't I get more? I mean, good for him. That was pretty surprising that he did it, but we've seen other players get their guaranteed contracts, Roquan Smith being another one that recently did it. But for Lamar, I think he needs to come to the realization that while, yeah, it's great to do things on your own, you've got to have that person that has had a full career of doing just this, negotiating to get you the best deal possible. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. I'm going to slide this to hockey just for a quick moment. My New York Rangers clinch a playoff berth with the Sabres shootout loss and Panthers regulation defeat. So the New York Rangers back in the playoffs. No surprise there, no mystery there. But Rangers did get busy at the trade deadline acquiring Patrick Kane. They're going to need to New York Rangers going to need to beat Boston. It's that simple. Similar to what my Knicks have to endure. The road to the Eastern Conference Finals is a second-round date with Milwaukee. In the Rangers' case, it's more than likely a second-round date with the Boston Bruins. Weird year for hockey. Everybody in the East that is a viable contender, 1 through 5, would be a number 1 seed in the West. It is a very rare season in hockey where that has happened. Back to football. Congratulations to my New York Rangers.
Smash, man.
DeAndre Hopkins, granted access by the Arizona Cardinals to seek a trade. It seems like the asking value for this trade has substantially gone down. About a week or so ago, I believe it was you that I was speaking to about this matter, that it's a 5th and 6th now that Arizona is seeking, when earlier it was a 2nd, maybe a 3rd. I'm not quite sure what the temperature is on this. DeAndre does have a bit of an outdated deal. He is on the wrong side of 30. He has had a couple of injuries last year, but yet he is still a future Hall of Famer and still a phenomenal talent. Nothing different on my end. I still think he's going to Dallas. And I look around at all these different rosters and I say, well, who else? Who else? Maybe the Buffalo Bills, but I still think it's Dallas.
Yeah, it's getting interesting for sure. And I think the reason why the Cardinals are coming forward and saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and let you seek a trade partner is because they also realize that they're not going to get that second. So let's let him find the team he wants. And it's kind of like Arizona is waving the white flag. All right, give us your best deal. As far as the compensation goes, though, is they didn't necessarily say they were seeking a 5th and 6th, but what the Cardinals organization did say is that it's likely going to take a similar deal that Dallas did for the likes of Brandon Cooks, with a 5th and a 6th and another draft pick next year type of deal. So we'll see. I think Dallas is still very well in the running. We still have the cap space to go in and get a DeAndre Hopkins, especially when you look at our current cap situation for our wide receiver room, and no one makes more than $6.2 million, I believe. And then you also take into consideration that you now have Zeke's contract off of the books. So there's a lot of things to look at. I don't necessarily know if it will be. I have this feeling it's Dallas still, but I think there's other teams that could also use his services. And I would say the Patriots, for example, that's a team that I wouldn't be shocked, especially if, going back to the Lamar Jackson thing, if they do go in on Lamar. Because like Robert Kraft said, Lamar has stated that he would like to be a Patriot, but it's up to Bill Belichick.
What's interesting about your statement is that when Lamar was drafted, it almost went that way, where it looked like the Patriots might have grabbed him. Because when Lamar originally got drafted, he was not all that happy because he knew that his immediate future was going to be behind incumbent quarterback Joe Flacco, who was a Super Bowl MVP and still kind of in his prime. But ultimately, I really think that Lamar is going to stay in Baltimore after all that. As far as DeAndre goes, I like what your team did in terms of the Cooks deal, where you're getting basically his former team to pay him for a decent chunk of this season. The Patriots, you mentioned them in reference to D-Hop. I mentioned them in reference to even Lamar, also D-Hop. The reason I don't see him going there is because I don't view them as a contender. And at his age, would he rather play with a Dak Prescott and a loaded receiving room, or a Buffalo with a loaded receiving room and Josh Allen, or then you got Mac Jones? I'm not saying that the Patriots can't potentially be a threat. I mean, now he would be pairing up with Juju, actually, which would kind of be interesting. You also got Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki over there.
If the Patriots can land a Lamar Jackson, then they have to go all in to get a DeAndre to get him a true number one.
Yeah, I almost feel that it would take one to get the other, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And who knows? There might be a team that steps in and offers Arizona something. But I know a lot of teams see this as a salary dump. And whenever you're taking on a player,
you got to throw something back on that same kind of wave. That's why when even, say, a few months ago, when we were considering maybe the 49ers, because, we always felt that Shanahan's offense would be just perfect for a guy like Lamar's skill set, but it would require a salary like a Bosa. And they're not going to want to part with that. Very interesting, man. This is even after that massive wave of big name free agency, there is still another wave coming. We got Packers GM Brian Gutkunst.
Brian Gutekunst.
Gutkunst.
Gutekunst.
He's the boss of Matt LaFleur. On Aaron Rodgers, our inability to reach him or for him to respond in any way, I think at that point I had to do my job. Similar to what's going on in Baltimore, there is a public perception thing that always happens when you have the GM, the quarterback. Essentially, he's saying that he couldn't reach him before the darkness retreat, after the darkness retreat. Essentially, that this was just one of those situations where it looks like it's almost like an election to an extent, like when you're trying to get certain people in your corner. Ultimately, they're in no rush to trade him. But at the same time, I also think that out of fairness for their new quarterback, Jordan Love, who actually is working out with some of his teammates already, getting ahead of things, I think they all want this to be behind them. Most recently, Packers GM mentioned that he doesn't necessarily need a number one just before we went on the air. You mentioned a couple of scenarios, maybe a couple of threes, maybe a 2 and a 3, a 2 and a 2. The conditional pick. I still think that the Packers might be stubborn and really try to get that one. I'm not sure, though. We'll see. But he will be a Jet. I think it's a formality. They're not going to go get Randall Cobb. And who was the other guy they got that he wanted?
Mercedes Lewis.
They did get Mercedes Lewis, right?
I don't know. The list was so long, and you reminded me that Chad Pennington was right around the corner. So,
well, from my understanding, he wants to get Brett Favre back in a Jet uniform, so that way Favre can sit behind him now and be like, "How does it feel, pal?" Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's a little comical. And once again, as I speak about desperation, we talked about it with the Watson situation. How the Browns were thirsty for a quarterback. Hadn't had one since Bernie Kosar. I mean, hell, Belichick was their coach back then. Belichick benched Kosar, favor of Vinny Testaverde. And, you're talking about a lot of quarterbacks. You're talking about Brady Quinn, Colt McCoy. Oh, man. Just so many bad quarterbacks.
I mean, the one that I thought was going to have a successful career was Tim Couch. And
I
then his
did
career
too.
took a
I did
turn.
too. Yeah, there's something about Cleveland and quarterbacks that just never happened. I mean, Deshaun Watson, limited time, limited stat line, nothing special. He was a top 5 quarterback in 2020 before all the allegations derailed his career. But in this case, I still believe Aaron Rodgers will be a Jet. It will happen. It's just a matter of not if, it's more about when. But I must admit, if I was working in the Jets organization or if I was a Jets fan, this would really be nerve-wracking, because if by some way of the universe that this man just wakes up one day, goes on another retreat, or just gets weird, it's like, you know what, man? Nah, I don't want to go to New York. Sorry, Randall. It's kind of cold out there. I want to go to San Francisco. I want to retire. I want to play for the San Antonio Brahmas. I don't know. I don't know what this guy wants to do, but he'll be a Jet. I do believe that. I mean, he said it on
Pat McAfee.
this guy's show. Yeah, McAfee. He said it on McAfee's show. I think it's a real thing. I think it's going to happen. Not taking too much out of this.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, not taking too much out of what Giant co-owner John Mara said today, but I will mention it nonetheless. Leaves door open for OBJ return. I am paraphrasing. This is not a direct quote. Says he's in favor of signing Odell if the numbers can work. Joe Shane recently, meaning in the last day or two, did make a mention that a guy like Odell is still someone that they are considering, and that, you know, they can move money around if it really makes sense for them. Having said that, I don't necessarily think it makes sense for them. We shall see. But the fact that Mara, without really being asked questions, made a mention of it, there might be some realness to it. I still think Odell is going to be the chip to fall after we figure out what happens with DeAndre. I actually think that's the event, the order of events of how that's going to play.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. And it kind of has to be, because OBJ can sit back and wait. And
No
once
reason.
Once DeAndre's off the table with a new team, then other teams are going to sit there. Is it desperation mode? No, not necessarily. But this receiving class this year is not deep at all. And after the top 5-6 receivers, there's a big drop off. So it's kind of like, I think OBJ is going to be signing a contract immediately after the draft, but we're going to see who gets drafted first, or who drafts receivers first.
And this is the thing with my team, picking at 25. I don't necessarily think you have to get a receiver at pick 25. If you can get the best center at 25, I think it's something that you definitely want to consider, because the Giants need help on the interior and at center. This is going to be Daniel Jones' 5th center in as many years. You know, and that is obviously an important connection. The previous quarterback for the organization, Eli Manning, does a pretty cool podcast with his former center, Sean O'Hara. You know how important centers are in this league. You know, we see it, the Kelsey brother, Jason, what he means to that connection with a young quarterback like a Jalen Hurts. You know, center quarterback, you go Saturday, Peyton Manning, you know, the iconic arguments. But yes, it is very important. And I value that actually more than getting a receiver in the first round. I still think the Giants can get good value in round 2 at the receiver position. I don't know about this Odell thing. When I look at every move the Giants have made, it screams youth movement. I don't know why they would make the exception for Odell. I think it's going to be, if the Giants were able to give him, like, say, 5, maybe 5 a year, maybe, because it gives us the discount. Hey, I'm a Giant, da-da-da. I still think it's Buffalo, and I think D-Hop's going to your guys. We shall see. NCAA Final Four is set. I got to admit, I don't like the University of Miami, but my God, that comeback yesterday against Texas, it happened like so unsuspectingly and so quiet, but it happened quick. Creighton lost a heartbreaker. This tournament has been wacky.
I don't even know if wacky's the term. Historic for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's been an incredible tournament. I mean, UConn was one of the dark horses that I thought was going to make some noise this year, and they have, they're the lone remaining team that has been to the championship, let alone won one.
Correct.
This was the first Elite Eight where we didn't have a number 1 seed in it. This is the first Final Four where we don't have a top 1, 2, or 3 seed in. And then you have the likes of a semifinals of Creighton versus San Diego State on one end, and then you have one, in my opinion, what was going to be the big game of UConn versus Miami. It's going to be a fun weekend. I'll say that, because there's so much uncertainty. I like FAU. I'm sorry, I said San Diego State. I meant FAU versus San Diego State, not Creighton. I like this FAU team. This is a team that we actually got the opportunity to see because they are at a Conference USA. They do play out UTSA, and they're a good team. I mean, all year long, they were sitting there at number 25. They won 10 in a row, never moved up because they're out of Conference USA. And here's a team that's now in the tournament with only 3 losses on the year and showing why they only have 3 losses on the year. Then you look at Miami, they're grit. They play some great basketball.
I just can't believe Texas blew that the way they did. We were done with our fantasy draft, just got done eating, and I'm in John's office watching this unfold, and I was just like, wow, man, you guys really allowed this to happen.
Yeah, but at the same time, I guess the positive to take out of it is after what this team went through at the beginning of the season with Chris Beard, the coach they hired from Texas Tech, and after his wife had pressed charges against him for domestic violence, and for Coach Terry to come in, take over for this UT program that was riding high, and it seemed like the season was lost. And for him to do what he did, it got him a 5-year contract. He got to the Elite Eight. He came within minutes of making it to the Final Four. They were the favorite team at this point going into, if they make the 5, even in the Elite Eight, they were the favorite team. There's a lot to be happy for, and a lot of great things to look forward to for the University of Texas. One of them I hope Dylan Mitchell returns. I hope he does not declare for the draft. Well, if he does, he's going to probably be in the D League for a few years, but he's a guy that I just love him on this squad, and I want to see him back one more season. Hey, NCAA March Madness, man. It's lived up to its name yet again.
Yeah, I even like just the way things got started when Farley Dickinson got that W, making it 2 years in a row where a New Jersey school really knocked out one of the big dogs. And that kind of set the tone for just a lot of upsets and just some great basketball all in the same. And I think people are starting to realize that it's not just flunky and a one-game thing where, like, these teams that from the smaller conferences are proving that they really do belong. It's not just one of those flash in the pan kind of things.
No, and I think it's also because you see that if you really sit down and think about it, it was Mark Few, it was Gonzaga that said, hey, why can't smaller schools do it? Yeah, you have the occasional George Mason that's going to come through, or
George Mason Patriots. I remember those guys.
You have guys that might come through, but whenever Gonzaga has been doing it for this long and has always been considered a small school, then you look at their rival in St. Mary's, who's finally doing really well.
Yes.
That's what I love about college basketball is there's so much parity around that you don't know who's going to win. You could be a 14-19 team in your conference tournament, win the tournament, make the big dance, and get to the Elite Eight.
But in what universe did you think that you would see where a team like Farley Dickinson knocks out a team like a Purdue, and then a proud university like Georgetown, with arguably their greatest player ever as their head coach, just totally bombing and tanking? I don't think anybody forecasted it because, prior to that season, Ewing actually went on a little run with them.
But just because you were a former player does not always translate to being a great
we've
coach.
seen it with Magic Johnson, great player, not a great coach. One of the true exceptions in the sport would be Larry Bird, because Larry Bird, even though for a short while he was a head coach, he was a damn good one with the Indiana Pacers. He actually replaced Larry Brown, who was also a hell of a coach. AL West divisional storylines. We are here. We're going to hit on Mike Zappi's division. Going to give the viewers an opportunity to see what we're talking about here. That says three-peat. The Astros will be looking to be the first one to go back-to-back since the 2000 Yankees. That was the third in a row for that particular team. Can the Mariners close the gap on the Astros after blowing the multiple leads against them in last year's playoffs? The arrival of Jacob deGrom for the Texas Rangers, Zappy's Texas Rangers. Will that be enough for them to qualify for the playoffs this year? Can the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim avoid another rough year? And continuing to ace Mike Trout's Hall of Fame career. We also have Shohei Ohtani, who finished second in AL voting for MVP last year. He will definitely be in the mix again to win an MVP this year. Will he be traded at the deadline? Because it doesn't look like he's going back to the Angels. The Oakland Athletics, from what I understand, still have a baseball team. Yeah, let's get going. We're going to start with the Oakland Athletics.
For the foreseeable future, at least.
Very young team with limited ceiling for success this year. Player to watch, former Yankee Ken Waldichuk, who was acquired in the Frankie Montes deal. They got the better of that one. If I'm not mistaken, they also acquired J.P. Sears in that deal, which is pretty good. Listen, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I know these guys have pride, and everybody wants to try to do their best, but this is just a terrible organization right now.
Yeah, there's really not much to say about this team, Yeah,
I didn't even give them a ticker, buddy.
Okay, hey, Seth Brown, their leading home run guy. I think he had 25 home runs last year. Maybe he gets 30. Paul Blackburn, does he get traded? That's
Jonah Hill in the front office.
There you go.
Wait.
Him and Brad Pitt talking it out.
Yeah. Oh, my God. They're bad, dude. I'm not trying to be an ass, but they are a bad, bad team. And, the facilities there are embarrassing for a major league team, way below standard. I think this team ends up in Vegas in the next couple of seasons. And it's crazy when you think about it. I mean, once upon a time, they were the Philadelphia Athletics. They've had quite a few historical moments as the Oakland Athletics. Ricky Henderson breaking the stolen bases record against the team that he started with, my New York Yankees. He did that as a member of the Athletics. In the 90s, they went to 89, 90, what was it? 88, 89, 90. They went to 3 consecutive World Series, winning one of them, the middle one. They got swept by the Cincinnati Reds in the last one. Of course, the Earthquake Series against the Giants. Kirk Gibson, iconic home run against Dennis Eckersley. But let's keep it real, folks. If I'm going this far back to make these guys sound relevant, it's because they're just not. Next team. The Los Angeles Angels.
You have a Derek Jeter play on that team.
Yes, that was historic.
That's another reason there.
Yankees always got the best of these guys in the early 2000s, but they definitely were a formidable team with the Giambi brothers. Rest in peace, Jeremy Giambi. Now, they had some good teams back then. Canseco, McGuire. A lot of back shots. Take it as you will. Okay. The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Mike Trout is in the middle of a Hall of Fame career, but the chances of making the postseason look bleak. The big question mark here, will their best player, today's modern-day Babe Ruth, Shohei Ohtani, is he going to get dealt? Got to get something for him, right? Can't just, not get anything for him is what I say. I don't see a scenario where this kid wants to come back to the Angels. I really don't. Feel bad for Mike Trout.
The only way I see him coming back to the Angels is because, like other people have said, he probably doesn't want to leave the West Coast due to geography to where it is to Japan.
That's the thing, though. I don't think he has to leave the West Coast to leave this team. I'm sure the Giants and Dodgers will be lined up to want to sign him.
Hey, add that to the Padres list of players to add, too.
That would be devastating. Put him in a Padre uniform with all the stuff they already have.
And you put him on a Mariners uniform, that might be what all the Mariners need to jump the Astros. So it's,
And I will say this, you know damn well that the New York Mets with Uncle Stevie, even though his preference is not the East Coast, they're going to try to go above and beyond to make him want to play on the East Coast.
They just need to bring him to Texas. Be like, look, just come halfway. You're good.
This team, though, in years past, I have in baseball predictions, giving them more than they deserve, saying like, I think they're going to do good this year. I think they'll figure it out. I still see the same old problems with this team. Joe Madden, who did great in Tampa, did not do well with these guys. Anthony Rendon, he's getting to an age where it looks like it's going to be questionable if he could even stay healthy. I expect Mike Trout to stay healthy. I think he's going to have a phenomenal season. I think Ohtani very well may win the MVP of the league. But when I look at the pitching staff, I just don't see enough of anything really, to be quite frank with you. And there are some bright spots offensively. This team does have a propensity to be able to score runs. I will give them that much. Hunter Renfroe, nice ball player. Good pickup. Brandon Drury, former Yankee, former Blue Jay. The guy plays 3 positions. Guy's versatile. He's got some pop in that bat. Just shy of 30 home runs as Tyler Ward, who cracked over the 20 plateau last year. It's their starting pitching, Zap. I don't see this team. But what's weird about this year, I said it on the previous show, AL East, when Idris and I were on yesterday. The interleague value, being that every division is shaved from 19 to 12 now, you can be not too great against your division, but kick some ass against the other league that could propel you into playoff play. So there are scenarios. I just don't think it applies to this team. This is not a good team. And in any other division, they'd be last. But because the Oakland Athletics play in this division, they won't be last.
That's a good way to look at it.
I'm not trying to be a jerk. There's just nothing else to say. And it's remarkable that they have 2 of the best 10 players in Major League Baseball, and they're still not going to be that good.
In history, not just in baseball, in the history of baseball at the same time. You know, and that's why I don't want to see another career wasted.
No.
I don't want to see Shohei's career, because Shohei, that alone could really, I don't want to say tarnish his legacy, but when you don't have the championships to back up and to go into the conversation as the greatest to ever play.
Right. You need some of that playoff value. That's what hurts Mike Trout. And to be honest with you, it also hurt Ken Griffey Jr. because between the injuries and relocating to Cincinnati, following in his father's footsteps, he never was the same guy where when he was in Seattle and you had A-Rod, you had Edgar, you had Jay Buhner, you had great pitching. Tino was there for a bit. Griffey was always in the national spotlight, and that's when baseball was doing such a phenomenal job of marketing their players. I remember the iconic commercial with Ken Griffey Jr. and my favorite player, Don Mattingly. That was one of the coolest commercials I ever saw Nike do. But onto your team. We got the Texas Rangers. This is a team, in my opinion, that's going to be hanging until the end this year. A healthy Jacob deGrom will help this team potentially get to October. I know how great he is when he's right. I think the warm weather is going to play value to him. But I must say, man, I like this Nathan Eovaldi in the 2 slot. You told me you like it too. Pushing John Gray back a bit. You got some pop in this lineup, man. Nathaniel Lowe at first. Guy's got power. Adolis Garcia, Marcus Semien, you got Seager. These guys are going to hit a lot of home runs.
And the guy I'm most excited about is a guy that I drafted last in our fantasy draft yesterday, and that's in a third baseman in Josh Young. I think with him coming up this year, obviously he was activated towards the end of the year last year, and he showed some pop.
Yeah, he's a talented player, very talented player.
To see him inserted into the lineup, I look at our positional players, and I say to myself, what are we missing? And it's a left fielder. This is what this team needs. They need a left fielder. They need to go out there and get Reynolds out of Pittsburgh, or obviously keep an eye out, because I don't think we're going to see a guy like Jack Leiter, who was our number 1 pick last year, come into that team. I think they're going to use him and trade him to acquire.
So you think Leiter is going to be a piece for the Reynolds deal?
Or for any outfielder deal, but I just, after his minor league season last year, it was not exactly the greatest. And then you also drafted a Kumar Rocker last year in the first round, who is already far more advanced than Jack Leiter. Also because
I think Jack Leiter is going to have a nice career, but I could see the reasoning why you might want to get rid of him in order to solidify that last piece when it comes to the lumber. Ultimately,
because
for you to make the playoffs this year, I feel good about your 1 and your 2. I think Evaldi is going to do very well for you. I think DeGrom's going to be a Cy Young candidate. You need Perez, Heaney, those guys. You need those guys to step up. If they can kind of supersede their projections this year, this could be a playoff team.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to Perez. I think he's going to come out and build off of last year. We saw it on full display in WBC this year while he was pitching for Venezuela. He looks good. He looks like he's in midseason form already.
Yeah.
What worries me more than anything is, we brought in Andrew Heaney to be our number 5 pitcher. Of course, Nathan Eovaldi came in. What
Andrew
I love
Heaney,
is
Field of Dreams fan. He had a
What I like what the Rangers did. They said, we need to fix our pitching. Let's go get an ace. They got an ace.
They certainly did.
But it's still our bullpen that worries me the most. Because there was a lot of games last year where the Rangers were putting up runs, but as soon as we bring in the bullpen, we're blowing a lot of leads.
Yeah, you were the victims of a lot of high-scoring losses.
Yeah, and so I could very well see a scenario where if a team like Texas, in order to get over the hump, they're going to have to package a deal that includes a Jack Leiter, includes a Jonah Heim, who is an up-and-coming catcher, especially when they have a Mitch Garver behind him, to go acquire the likes of somebody. And then they also have other prospects that can trade away. But I like the direction this Rangers team's going. I think they're a year away. They will be battling. I do have them right there at the cusp of a 500 team this year. I think they get over the hump and make it to 83 wins. But if they could just get a couple little things fixed, they're going to be a team to watch.
Well, I also think that they're one of those teams that if you get the right deadline deal or two, because once again, and I've been saying this like a broken record, I view the Rangers as the 3rd best team in this division, and it's a distant 3rd. Nothing to be ashamed of, because the other 2 teams we're going to speak about are very, very good. But the thing with the Angels, especially with the extra wild card, a team that I'm keeping my eyes on if I'm a Rangers fan is the Toronto Blue Jays. Because I find them to be in a lot of aspects of the game the heir apparent to what you guys are currently. And anyone who saw my AL East preview saw that I don't have the highest opinion of the Blue Jays this year, and I might have surprised some people with that. Another team you're going to want to pay attention to see if you can outdo them for one of these wild cards, a team like the Minnesota Twins, a team like the Baltimore Orioles. But it's going to be very fun, and what makes it exciting is that it's not like the old days where being a wild card was like an instant death sentence. We've seen it time and time again that just getting into the playoffs, ride the wave. Look at the Phillies last year. We've seen it happen quite a bit over the years. It's just getting in, man. You get in, you got a DeGrom pitching at his, New York Mets lost DeGrom. What's the one playoff game they won last year, and who was the guy that pitched it?
Not DeGrom. Of course not DeGrom. Why would it be DeGrom? I'm excited about it. He's looked great.
He's looked great. Listen, dude, even as a Met, dude, and I love the Yankees, and I don't have a lot of love for the Mets. You want the best players to play, whether you like them or not. You want the best players to play. Hey, man, I'm a Giants fan. I want to see Micah Parsons play. Why wouldn't I? Know what I'm saying, dude?
Exactly. Oh, absolutely. I know what you're saying.
Seattle Mariners last year, 2 very tough wild card games. It was uncanny the way they lost those 2 games to the Houston Astros. It really did look like they had the Astros on the ropes. At minimum, they proved that they're arriving to the table. Julio Rodriguez, sensational player. He was my first pick in our fantasy draft because I missed out on my guy Judge. But I do think it's the pitching staff that's going to be a telltale if they have enough to really make a go at the defending champions in the standings. Their big 3 in this rotation, I spelled Castillo's name wrong. I will fix that. Robbie Ray and Logan Gilbert. Player to watch is their newest addition, Teoscar Hernandez. That's a natural upgrade over Mitch Haniger. That's another reason why I was a little down on the Blue Jays losing that guy. Ultimately, I know what they're going to get out of Castillo. But it is 2 through 4, 5, whatever have you, that I think is going to potentially hinder this team from winning the division. But I do think this is a playoff team and a team that could be dangerous. I see a white light. Now, unfortunately, I can't see it.
Wanted you to see that Teoscar Hernandez is on my lineup.
Oh, is that right? I didn't realize that you drafted him.
Yeah. I like that guy a lot. I think he's a great talent.
I
Great
was
pickup.
thinking about grabbing him, and you know how it goes in the draft. You have like 4 players that you're thinking about, and sometimes you just don't get all the guys you want, but he's a hell of a talent.
No, he's a hell of a talent to go with a hell of a young team. I like this team a lot. I mean, Julio Rodriguez, I don't want to say he burst onto the scene, but he burst onto the scene.
No, he certainly did.
And he just never stopped. That home run derby was one for the ages. And then they went in, they get a Luis Castillo into their lineup, which pushes Robbie Ray back. I like that trade. I don't think it's enough to get them over the hump because you talk about Houston and you talk about Seattle and you talk about everyone else. But when I talk about Houston, I talk about Houston. Then I talk about Seattle, because I think there's still a big gap between Houston and everyone else.
We're gonna see. I do believe that the Altuve injury, we're gonna talk on them in a moment, could be a thing. I mean, I do like their pitching staff, but some of those guys are injury prone, and they did lose the American League Cy Young winner of last year, who's now pitching for Dorney's Mets. Back to these guys, the Mariners. They proved that they could hang with the Astros last year in the playoffs, which is encouraging if you're a Mariner fan. But similar to what we said about the Padres in many previous years as baseball fans, they're good. They could beat the Dodgers in the playoffs. Maybe they're going to win the division. That's kind of how I view this. While I view Seattle as a potential player in October that could knock out the Yankees or the Astros on a given series because they are talented, I don't have them just ahead of the Astros yet, but they are going to be a damn good team.
They're getting to.
No, they certainly are.
They're definitely a team that could be up there at the mid 90s to high 90s win margin.
This division's reminding me of what we saw in the NL West for a long time, where right now you have 2 powerhouses. One is the elite of the elite. The other one is like a powerhouse. Now you have an emerging Texas team. So those 3 are upward. And then you got 2 shitbags when you talk about the Angels and the Athletics. And my God, man, if you're an Oakland fan, it's like you're losing everything, man. You lost your Raiders. Now you're going to lose your Athletics. Yeah.
You know what they're not going to lose? I don't know. I'm just asking. I can't.
An all-star player because they don't have one. To the Houston Astros, my favorites. Just kidding, kids. The defending world champs lost reigning AL Cy Young Award winner, Mr. Justin Verlander. He's a New York Met. I must admit, though, Dusty Baker's team 1 through 5, this pitching staff is still very deep. We got co-aces Framber Diaz as well as Christian Javier, 2 guys that I think highly of, but 2 guys that I do think they got to watch the innings. Newest addition, Jose Abreu, is their player to watch. Jose Altuve may be out up to 3 months, and this team is arguably the most balanced when you look at the lineup. I mean, and I'm talking about all of baseball, not just this division. You got Jeremy Pena, Jordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker, and Michael Brantley. That's only a couple of names. I'm not talking about their depth at catcher. This team is very, very talented. And, Dusty Baker is a damn good manager, I got to say. I had many choice words for the former manager of this team, A.J. Hinch, but I do have a fine respect for Dusty.
Oh, I love Dusty. I love Dusty. I got to agree with you that 100%. Look, this Astros team, man, I know you don't want to say it because you're a Yankee fan. We know your personal connections towards A.J. Hinch. But this team is
they're good, dude. They really are.
They really are. I think, personally, on my personal opinion, I think they have the best pitching staff in baseball.
They might.
I think they have a remarkable bullpen. And when you look at their actual lineup, even with Altuve out, we're going to find out exactly what they have in David Hensley, who he did see some playing time last year, but this is his first year starting. And obviously, you never plan to be inserted into the lineup just like that because of an injury at the World Baseball Classic.
Correct.
But when I look at an injury to an Jose Altuve and this Astro team, I think it happened at the right time instead of later. It's better to deal with the injuries early than late.
Well stated, because as you know, a lot of my New York Yankees have had some injuries, whether it be Luis Severino super recently with a lat strain. whether it be Carlos Rodon, whether it be Harrison Bader, who might not be back to the middle of the month. We've dealt with some of our fair share of injuries as well. And I said the same thing to Idris on the East show. You'd rather miss guys now when it's early than have to deal with this crap in the middle of the pennant race in August and in the dog days of summer.
Absolutely. And you look at this, I mean, also when you lose a team captain of locker room presence like an Altuve,
yeah,
you look around and you say, oh, wait, we still have a lot of team captains and locker room presence on this
No,
team.
I mean, Abreu going in, man, I felt like he was kind of falling off a little lackluster in Chicago, but I think coming into a lineup like this, where he has so much protection, he could really turn some heads and have an MVP caliber season.
Yeah, I was going to say what he reminds me of, what he can do this year is a Nelson Cruz type season.
I could see that.
A quiet 38 home runs, 41 home runs, where just because of the roster he's on, surrounded by the amount of talent he's on, it's going to go unnoticed. And you ask me, is he better than Yuli Gurriel? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge.
And I'm going to put this up while we're speaking about the MVP award potentially. These are just three names that I came up with. No surprises here, really. But I literally just mentioned Abreu that could join these guys. Trout will get consideration, but because Ohtani is his teammate, even if Trout has that kind of year, and even Judge, man, it took Judge to break history in Yankee lore to hold off Ohtani. I think this year Ohtani really does win the MVP. God willing, he stays healthy because, pitching and what he does offensively, it's a lot, man. I have mixed feelings about how they grade MVPs. I don't want to be that dude. I say he's a good pitcher, not a great one. He's a great offensive player. But when I look at the whole body of it, I'm like, but still, double-digit victories. Nobody's done that in the history of baseball, and while putting up the numbers he puts up offensively.
Look, I know it's too soon. Season starts in a couple of days. He's the MVP. He's going to win the MVP.
He should be.
And he would have got MVP last year if it wasn't for.
But like I said earlier in his career, the Angels did have a habit of shutting him down. Similar to what we see in basketball with game management. There was innings management with him. I think he's past that now that he's more accustomed to playing in the States.
I want to see how Jeremy Pena follows up the ALCS and World Series.
Yeah, Jeremy Pena is going to be a hell of a player.
Because I think he's going to be a quiet candidate for MVP this year when you look at the grand scheme of things, what he does with his glove as well as what he can do behind the plate. I think he's a fantastic player and just another probably great Astro player for the next 10 years, quite honestly.
I got to make a mention of this, non-division related. How cool is it to see Anthony Volpe get his opportunity? And I'm stoked about it because it gets IKF at a short. I'm still it's not an ideal scenario in left where you have the likes of IKF and Aaron Hicks. Harrison Bader starting the year on the IL for us. So I expect you're going to see Aaron Judge getting some action in center field to start the year. Giancarlo Stanton, if he's going to play the outfield, put him in right, more of a liability in left. Enough about my team. This is not their division. Potential Cy Young Award winners, Jacob deGrom, Framber Diaz, Luis Castillo, and Christian Javier. Those are just a few that come to mind. I love Shohei Ohtani, but I do not see him as a Cy Young candidate.
Who? Framber Valdez.
Astros.
Okay, good. You threw me off with the Diaz.
I put Diaz. I had before I went on the air, I was talking about Edwin. Let me get that off here.
It's like what's going on here?
What did you say, Ricardo?
No, I think that's exactly who you say. I could see maybe Rocka Baby having himself a much better season this year, but that team belongs to Framber Valdez, and it's pretty clear when they were able to let a guy like Justin Verlander venture off back to the National League and with the Mets. So, no, I think I think you could pull a couple of pitchers just from the Astros starting five to be the Cy Young, honestly.
Well, and to be quite honest with you, that was a motivating factor on why they allowed Justin Verlander to walk. But I do believe that team, while filling the positions wisely, they do lose some toughness by losing Verlander and that staff. That will be revealed if it's going to be an issue. But, on the flip side, Verlander has not exactly been Mr. October in the playoffs while he's amassed a Hall of Fame resume. It's going to be interesting to see what he and Max do in Queens. These are my final standings according to me. I got the Astros just missing 100 wins.
Yeah, I got them at 106 this year.
106. So you got a 7-game disparity with me. I got the Mariners winning 96, man. Your Rangers.
Yeah, right around where I have them. Rangers right there, right around
Your
there.
Rangers 10 over 500. I got the Angels, and I might be being a little too kind here. I got them at 76 and 86. And I got the Oakland Athletics. I would have to revisit the National League Central show to see if the Oakland Athletics. No, that I remember they are going to be the worst team in baseball, worse than the Cincinnati Reds.
Is that even possible?
And those two teams represented each league so proudly back in the 90s series.
Right. I'm excited about this division. Hey, I got one for you. Who can beat Judge?
In this particular division?
There's a few guys I could think of.
Yeah, there are a few guys. Julio Rodriguez for sure. While I don't see it, but always there's a possibility if he gets real hot, a Mike Trout, assuming he would stay healthy enough. And not for nothing, dude. I got a thing about Marcus Semien where I could see him like raking.
Oh, for me, I think Marcus kind of bottoms out at around 42 to 44. Yeah, Mike Trout, obviously. I'll put Shohei on there because he's that talented of a player.
Yeah, Shohei, you never know.
Yeah, and Julio, I like Julio.
The reason I won't put Shohei is because of the responsibility of pitching. It's just such a heavy load. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you're a manager, if I'm a manager, and I have a Shohei that's pitching a great year and also in the conversation for home run leader, I think I might just continue to let him get it.
No, I always found this kind of cool and interesting. As we know, the DH is universal now. It's been for a couple of years now. But Shohei is like literally the only pitcher left that still gets a bat during the actual game that he pitches. That's kind of cool. So that essentially the Angels waive the DH in games that he pitches.
Yeah. Well, at least
you still do have the option to waive the DH.
Right. Let's say because the National League, most of the pitchers bat.
Well, they did, but still, with the new DH being a thing now, National League teams are making their lineups because that was one of the complaints when we saw World Series that a lot of people thought was unfair. People would say, man, it's not fair that the National League doesn't have the benches that the American leagues do. They're not going to see an Edgar Martinez come off a bench or a Big Papi. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
But this is going to be – Indeed. This is going to be a hell of a race. This is our final division preview, and we are going to be doing weekly baseball shows now, keeping everybody up to date with what's going on around the league. Very cool time, fun time.
Now that we've made it, we've now covered all 6 divisions. Now we can officially give our World Series predictions.
Yes, we can, Mr. Zappi. All right. Okay. In the playoffs, I'm going to give you the whole layout here. I got the Yankees finishing a game above the Astros. I know you're going to laugh at me. Astros at the number 2 seed, 99 wins. 3 seed, I got the Guardians. My 3 wild cards. I've got the Seattle Mariners, the Baltimore Orioles, Tampa Bay Rays. I agree with you about your Rangers being on the cusp, not quite there yet. The way I see the playoffs playing out, I've got the New York Yankees defeating the Seattle Mariners in the American League Championship Series. They will not have to face the Astros. I got the Yankees going to the World Series. And on the other end, San Diego winning the West with the best record in all of baseball. Out East, I got the Braves winning. In the Central, I got the Cardinals. My 3 wild cards are. Now, this is interesting. I might renege on this, but I'm going to go with it because it's what I said. I said the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Philadelphia Phillies, and the New York Mets. I'm having a growing concern for the Philadelphia Phillies going into this year after doing a little more homework and a little more reasoning. I've got the San Diego Padres winning the National League Championship Series against the Atlanta Braves and ultimately defeating the New York Yankees in the World Series, getting revenge for '98. I got the San Diego Padres winning it all.
I like it. So I've gone back and forth as of late. I didn't do the AL East show with you, and the more I thought about it long and long, I think the Mariners are going to win that division. I think – not the Mariners. I'm sorry. The Blue Jays are going to win the AL East.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I wish you were on that show.
I just been thinking about them. You know how I kept saying that they're a team that can easily win over 100 games.
Yeah, you did say that.
And they're a team that can also win 90 games.
You did
Something
say
tells
that.
me they're going to win the division but lose in the first round.
Let me ask you a question. Do you have any confidence in that, like that thing that I threw out there about my theory that Mattingly might, take over there? They get off to a rough start, similar to last year's Phillies? Not really.
I would say yeah, because I kind of put him in the same situation as Bob Melvin.
That kind of makes sense. Okay.
So, and when you have a team that won as many games as the Blue Jays did last year, and you have a good lineup coming back, I think your expectations should be high. And a lot of people would say the Blue Jays are the second best team in the American League. Others will say it's the Yankees or the Astros. But the Blue Jays are definitely a top 3 team in the American League. I'm going in the American League.
I disagree with you, but I respect your opinion.
No, that's not my opinion. That's the opinion of others, that they believe the Blue Jays are a top 3 team in the American League.
Well, I think others are smoking crack.
But anyways, so I have the Blue Jays winning the East. I have the Guardians winning the Central. I have the Astros winning the West, of course. Mariners, one of the wild cards. Yankees, another wild card. And I'm going to go with the Orioles as the other wild card with, what is that one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, and then for the National League, nothing changed for the National League. I have the Padres winning. I have the Braves winning. I have the National League. It's all the same playoff teams.
Yeah, I recall that. Yeah, because we were in heavy agreement on that. Who do you have in the World Series?
Astros versus the Padres.
And who do you have winning?
Astros.
Oh boy. Baseball is back, ladies and gentlemen. We are very excited about this time of the year. Nothing quite like opening day. It's special. Make it a point to like and subscribe to the channel on YouTube, the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. Definitely make it a point to check out Casual Convo with our buddy Idris, a.k.a. Bosco from the Bronx, as well as the beautiful Coco. Zappy, anything that you want to speak on in the last 90 or so seconds before we slide out of here?
No, I just thought it was very interesting today that Jerry Jones comes out and does say that he never did, in fact, offer a renegotiated contract to Zeke. It was a release. And whenever I hear something like that, that kind of tells me that the door is not closed. He did say that a Zeke reunion is possible. I think Zeke is also facing the reality that he's not going to get the money as to why Dallas probably cut him. Will he be back? I hope so, because he does mean a lot to this team, especially on third downs with his pass blocking abilities and his goal-to-goal touchdowns that he can get. I don't want to see him in the Eagles jersey, but yeah, so I'm going to keep a close eye on that. Other than that, that's all I got, man. Let's go.
From Zeke to Saquon, I think it's far-fetched, worst-case scenario, but there is a slight concern that I don't want to see Saquon hold out. He's on the franchise tag. We've been talking about running backs being undervalued, so that's definitely a thing. Last thing I'd like to say, New York Knicks finally getting off the schneid. First victory after losing their heartbeat from the 70s, Mr. Willis Reed, 1970 and 1973 championships, both over Wilt Chamberlain's Los Angeles Lakers. Knicks have an identity crisis. They got to figure it out ahead of the playoffs. They beat the best team in Denver, and then they go lose 2 out in Florida to Miami and Orlando. get whacked by the 76ers, but play a lowly Houston team and get a much-needed win. Knicks need to sharpen up before the playoffs, and I am in favor of moving on from Julius Randle in the offseason. I will elaborate on it on a later show. For Mike Zappi, I am Richie. Thank you for staying up and hanging with us. We are